All right, welcome to our Christmas edition here of our football showcase show. Cory Geiger, Jason Dambach. We're going to have some fun with this. JD came up with a great idea. I think this is awesome. Of who should we give lumps of coal to this Christmas? It's a great idea. And I just want to say, first of all, I appreciate everything that you've done for the site. For me personally, JD, it's been terrific. JD has provided some phenomenal content and given his time over the last few months. And I just wanted to tell you, first and foremost, that it is greatly appreciated.
Well, I appreciate it. You're doing a great job with the site. It's really come together very well. The content is awesome. I'm just really excited to be a part of it. And as far as this idea about handing out Christmas coal, if you and your wife Dana are anything like my wife Erica and me, all we've been doing is wrapping presents and trying to make Christmas as great and special as we can for our kids. So why don't we go on the other side of it and hand out some coal, because it's been all fluff and candy and gingerbread man for the last month.
My wife has been shopping nonstop, like for the last 3 or 4 days. She gets off work and goes straight shopping till 10:30 or 11 o'clock. That's her favorite thing to do, by the way. My wife is one of those people that can walk around the store for 4 hours and not buy anything and be perfectly happy. It drives me nuts. I hate going to the store, especially this time of year.
I'm the opposite. I'm in there 25 minutes. I make eye contact with something, boom, it's in the cart. Exactly. We're gone.
All right. So we're going to go with our lump of coal here. The first one is pretty easy. I'll start with this, and that is to the Big Ten, because I think the Big Ten leadership or lack of leadership has just been appalling for the last few months. Now, let me say first and foremost, I don't necessarily fault the Big Ten at all for being cautious about the coronavirus, but I think they jumped to conclusions initially, pushing the season back, thinking that everybody else would follow suit because, hey, they're the Big Ten. We're the big dogs here. Everybody will follow what we do. I think they're just very, very poor planning and leadership, JD, from the very beginning. And then there are other steps as the season went on. But to me, without Jim Delaney, you've got new commissioner Kevin. Look, this is a tough year. This is a hard year. It's hard to make good decisions during a very, very difficult situation. And it's easy for all of us to sit back and criticize people when they make decisions. But I think the Big Ten has dropped the ball repeatedly throughout this whole situation.
Yeah, Cory, you bring up a good point. This was we have to acknowledge a tough spot, certainly for Kevin Warren. And if you go back to the two conferences that right from the get-go said, we're playing, we're going to go for it, the ACC and the SEC. Well, what do they have in common? And you can throw the Big 12 in there as well. Their leadership has been there. The commissioners of those conferences have been there in those jobs for decades, really. Even a guy like Greg Sankey in the SEC has been around the SEC for a long, long time, even before he was commissioner. So, you had that built-in equity that the people at the top, the ultimate decision maker, the commissioner, the one that has to pull everything together, all the presidents and the ADs, they had years of experience, years of goodwill, whereas Kevin Warren, a highly respected guy who I'm sure unanimously was chosen for that position, was put in a really hard spot. That said, there were a number of decisions along the way that were made by the Big Ten, whether it be on the field, with the decision making, with scheduling and some of the decisions that came thereabouts, or off the field with the extra testing and the cardiac testing and some of the extra safeguards that they had in place, which aren't bad things, don't get me wrong. They truly were trying to put the health of the student athlete first. But there's no question that in a conference that likes to build itself and bill itself as one of the leaders and the legends of college football, they were nothing but a follower in 2020.
No doubt about it. The decision to delay the season and push it back, as far as put the Big Ten behind an 8-ball, because you had to play all these consecutive weeks. You had no outs. If there was a game that was postponed, it just had to be canceled because you had no more time. And so then you put yourself in a position where teams are only playing 5 games, like Ohio State. and now you've got to make decisions because you have a rule that says you got to play 6 games. Well, who came up with that rule? I mean, what kind of random generic rule is that with lack of foresight? Did they not think when they came up with the 6-game rule? Well, what if Ohio State is undefeated and only plays 5 games? We could be in trouble. That leadership is about thinking through every possibility. Think tank. You get everybody in a room and you think every possibility. Okay, we're going to put a 6-game limit on this. What if Ohio State only plays 5 games and they're the number 3 team in the country? Well, I don't know. I guess we'll have to change the rule now and make it appear that we're pandering to Ohio State. Now 21-day rule with the COVID. Let's change it to 17 days. Okay, well, you should have done that weeks ago when it was pretty obvious you didn't need 21 days, because now it just looks like you're pandering to Ohio State again, JD.
Yeah, that's a good point. And the other thing I want to point out about the Big Ten is if you look at the ACC, the SEC, the Big 12, all the other sports, not just football, but all the other sports continued on.
Yep.
Whether it be soccer, volleyball, what the other all sports were able to continue on, cross country, track and field. And in the Big Ten, yes, they got back to playing football, same thing in the Pac-12, but their delayed reactive decision-making instead of proactive decision-making left all these other sports in the dust as well. And so now you have athletes in all these other sports that really had a very difficult fall, didn't get to compete. They're trying to cobble together spring seasons now, but again, that just really, that throws off the entire calendar. So I want to acknowledge that side of it as well. It wasn't just football, which was very disjointed, but none of the other sports, because they didn't take that proactive approach, all these other sports, the Olympic sports, so to speak, were left in the dust.
And just for disclosure, and Jay will be fine with me mentioning that, Jason's wife, Erica, is the women's soccer coach at Penn State, highly successful, won a national title. So you know exactly what you're speaking of. And your wife certainly, I mean, when you've got these athletes just wondering what's going to happen, where's the leadership, what's the decision? We've heard about it from football. James Franklin talks about he's got to talk to his athletes and the parents because people just want to know. People just want information. They want to know the truth. They want to know what's going to happen. And I think that's really where the Big Ten has dropped the ball through a lot of this, by just not being transparent and keeping everybody in the loop along the way.
Yeah, and again, this has always been a conversation about being one of the forerunners, about leadership. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's the oldest conference in college football. Or in college athletics, or if not the oldest, then certainly the most legendary. And they were just nothing but very reactive and played follow the leader, quite frankly, this year.
All right, we're handing out our lumps of coal for Christmas. We've got 2 more for you. Keeping with football and college sports. What's your next one, JD?
Well, I have to hand a big lump of coal to the SEC athletic directors. And look, if you watched SEC football this year, in a lot of ways, it was almost like business as usual. There were fans in the stands. Yes, there were teams that were affected by COVID, but remarkably, they were able to get their players back on the field pretty quickly. Heck, Nick Saban thought he tested positive for COVID early in the year. Remarkably, was able to get tested and be able to get on the field. And then later in the year, he tests positive once again. So, but in a lot of ways, it was still very much business as usual. And nothing underscored that more than the fact that we had a number of SEC coaches that were fired at the end of the year, not the least of which was Gus Malzahn at Auburn. You had Muschamp at South Carolina, and you had poor Derek Mason at Vanderbilt, whose team was so decimated that the women's soccer goalkeeper had to come kick off and kick extra points for them. That was disappointing to see, quite frankly. I understand that, especially in the case of Muschamp and Malzahn, they knew what they signed up for, highly charged environments, especially when you have programs in their states, in South Carolina with Clemson and in Alabama with the University of Alabama, that are so successful, and they're trying to play catch up. And I'm sure there's a lot of pressure on them. But the fact that we're firing coaches during a pandemic, when they're just trying to put players on the field and field rosters, I thought was very disappointing and why I'm handing out a big lump of coal to SEC athletic directors.
Yeah, I agree with all of that because, to make decisions, huge decisions during this time when everybody is just trying to get through each day, just get through the day with all the testing and all the protocols. To make multi-million-dollar decisions, Gus Malzahn has a $20 million buyout. So you're going to fire that guy and eat all that money. Sure, Gus Malzahn is underachieved at Auburn, but he's underachieved for several years. I get ousting Gus Malzahn, but not necessarily doing it this year. Penn State plays Auburn, by the way, in week 3 next year, so we'll get to see the new coach. But I'm with you, man. To try to make life-altering decisions, college athletics, in our personal lives, this really was not the year to do that, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and you hit on something. It wasn't so much the personnel decision, although that sort of stunk also. But it was the fact that in this climate, in this environment, in college athletics, I'm not even going to bring in the whole side of the argument that people have lost their jobs and we know what's going on in the world. But just if you look at it within the world of college athletics, where sports are being cut, people are losing jobs, being furloughed in the athletic departments themselves, university-wide. The fact that a university is going to cough up $25 million to buy out a head coach, it really underscores what's wrong with college athletics right now. And but donors are coughing up a lot of that money. Well, that's $20 million that those donors aren't investing into the athletic departments to make them better, to create jobs,
yep,
and to sustain the thing I love about college athletics, underwriting scholarships and all of the great things that you can do in college athletics. So that is a good point you brought up, and really what makes it really sickening to see these millions of dollars that are being handed as golden parachutes to these coaches that could be used for something much better.
And since we're on that, let's give credit to Sarah Fuller. What a tremendous story. One of the best sports stories of this year, any year, because she got an opportunity. College athletics are about opportunities to play. She's there playing soccer, and she's able to go play football because she's there to play soccer. We'd better be careful. We need to make sure we keep giving all of these athletes. Just because it's not football or basketball doesn't mean these young people don't deserve their opportunity. So I wanted to throw the Sarah Fuller in because that was a great story. All right, our third lump of coal. This is something that JD and I are very passionate about. We go back a long way in minor league baseball. I've covered minor league baseball for 25 years. Jason worked in minor league baseball for 2 decades, including with the Altoona Curve and the State College Spikes. And what has happened in baseball is appalling. It is atrocious the way Major League Baseball has strong-armed minor league baseball teams, owners, franchises, cities, fans, businesses. Just very disturbing to me. And we're in a society now, JD, where the rich get richer, man. If you have the money and you have the power, you have the control, you have the say. Major League Baseball didn't have to go this route by strong-arming everybody. They had all the leverage in the world, but they didn't have to go this route and kill 40 franchises or remove 40 franchises from affiliated ball and put the whole system in flux with thousands of jobs and millions of baseball fans around the country wondering if their local team is even going to survive.
I don't even know what direction I can begin with here, Cory, because all of it is just one gigantic lump of coal, mostly to Rob, the commissioner of baseball, but he doesn't work alone. He works for the 30 owners, and he has other constituents in Major League Baseball that are to blame. Cory, when you and I were growing up in the 80s, there was nothing bigger than baseball. Yeah. Now, baseball had been on a bit of a decline probably since the 60s when our parents fell in love with the game. There's no doubt about it. But baseball was still huge in the 80s. And there was something romantic about it. And it was still the NFL was huge, obviously, but baseball was right there. The NBA wasn't nearly on that stage yet, although it got there with Michael Jordan and and Larry Bird, Magic, and those guys, sure. But baseball was still on a high pedestal. But the strike of 94, the steroid era, the decision to put playoff games at 9 o'clock at night, they have absolutely ruined baseball to the point where, and not to mention all of the way the game is played today and the analytics side of it, it all stinks. Major League Baseball is a terrible, terrible product to begin with. And then when you look at the institution that is Major League Baseball, instead of trying to grow the game organically, just trying to kill the game. They really only care about revenue. That's all they care about. Because if you listen to their talk points, Cory, when people criticize them about game times and the pace of play, they like to cite the fact that major league revenues and franchise values are at an all-time high. Well, that's great, but guess what? You're not growing the game. And by undercutting minor league baseball, which is where you grow the game little by little in small communities and some larger cities as well, that minor league baseball is a part of, you've absolutely undercut the next generation of baseball. And I, for one, Cory, will relish the day that Major League Baseball is a second-class citizen in professional sports. It's almost there, frankly. To me, I don't watch it anymore. I haven't watched a pitch of a Major League Baseball game in probably 7 or 8 years. That includes the World Series and the All-Star game, because I can't stand what they've done to them, and it's a terrible product.
Great. That's very well said. And you're talking, listen, folks, JD was an executive, a high-ranking executive in minor league baseball for many years, a president, a GM of teams. So I think that those words carry a lot of weight. And if we talk about from the minor league side, to me, I have hated forever the salary structure in minor league baseball. They don't treat minor league baseball players like second-class citizens. They treat them like third-world citizens with the paltry pay that they get. All minor league players wanted was a little bit more money. Instead of making $1,200, $1,300 a month, $1,700, $1,800 in AA, instead of making $3 to $6 an hour, which is what it came down to, minor league baseball players just wanted some more money. They took their case to the courts. It's taken a while. They were actually winning. They were going to be in position to make some more money. So what does Major League Baseball do? Kill it. If we got to pay these guys more money, we're just going to lop off 20 to 30% of the players that we have to pay because we don't want to do it. Do not let anything, any of the lies that Major League Baseball is telling you seep in that this is about ballparks being up to standard. This is about Major League Baseball doesn't want to pay these guys. They've never paid these guys. And what is equally as sickening to me is these guys that make $1,500, $1,600 a month in the minor leagues, once they get to the big leagues and they make their money, they don't give a crap about the minor leagues anymore. They forget where they came from. It's the ultimate example. When these guys get to them, there's no union in minor league baseball. It's fend for yourself. And that's what this whole thing came down to. Once the minor leaguers were going to have a little bit more leverage and make some more money, Major League Baseball said, we're not paying for that. And that's really the genesis of how all of this started.
And if you want to talk about leverage, the saddest part of all of this, the pandemic, of course, got in the way of a lot of businesses. And the worst part of all of this, Cory, is that because of the pandemic, Major League Baseball won. When you look at the situation with minor league baseball, because there was a pretty big groundswell happening around this time last year into the first quarter of 2020. Congress was starting to put committees together to fight to save minor league baseball in a lot of ways. And once the pandemic hit and then the presidential election, that all went away. And Major League Baseball, instead of being able to negotiate in good faith to come up with a solution, and by the way, the solution that they've come up with is not a solution. They have taken affiliated baseball away from 42 markets in this country. Yeah, they've saved baseball and games will be played in places like State College, but it's not the same. And because of the pandemic, all of the leverage that would have pushed against Major League Baseball went away, and they just kind of said, all right, well, here's the system. And even a franchise like the Altoona Curve, which seems to be in a good position and is surviving all of this, make no mistake, their franchise value is much lower than it was before, and significantly lower, you could probably say.
They're going to have everything dictated to them now. It's my way or the highway. You had better do this stuff, or we could come in and take your franchise away like we did these other 42.
That's exactly right. They basically turned it into a typical franchise system, like you would see with a McDonald's or a Dunkin' Donuts or something like that, where, hey, if you don't like it, well, fine. We'll take your license away and we'll just move away from that community. There is no investment anymore in the community from Major League Baseball. What they've done to the game and the way they've turned their back on young fans and generations of fans like you and I who grew up revering baseball and the institution that was Major League Baseball. It's hard to support it anymore. I, for one, don't. I'm done.
All right. Good stuff there from Jason Dambach. I'm Cory Geiger with our lumps of coal for Christmas. We're going with the Big Ten leadership, the SEC ADs, Major League Baseball for the Wade handling. JD, I want to again thank you for everything you've done. Merry Christmas to you and your family, bud.
Same to you, my friend. We'll do it again next year, all right?
All right. Thanks, pal.